Technology reshapes everything. AI, cloud systems, cybersecurity, the future of work. We don't guess here. Wealth building, money psychology, financial freedom. The conversations they don't want you having. Engineered with ruthless accuracy. Every word verified, every claim backed. Modern love, intimacy, dating dynamics, real human connection in a disconnected world. Truth about attraction, truth about belonging. 4 pillars. Endless conversations. Research-driven, LM-enhanced, human-validated. No fluff, no filler, just truth. We cut through the noise. Research-driven conversations. Truth delivered hard. Spirituality, discipline, mindset. Becoming who you're meant to be. Endless conversations. No filler. Stay curious. Welcome to the Robert Joodat Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Robert Joodat Podcast, available on Spotify and all other major platforms.
I want you to just take a second and imagine the year 2030. I mean, it is really not that far away.
No, it's practically tomorrow in demographic terms.
Right. So imagine walking down your local high street, grabbing a coffee, and just looking at the people around you. According to the demographic projections we are diving into today, by that year, by 2030, a staggering 45% of women aged 25 to 44 might be entirely single.
Which is just a massive number. We aren't just talking about a slight dip in dating app usage here. It represents a fundamental, ground-up rewiring of the traditional human timeline.
It completely reshapes how we think about society, the economy, and just, what a normal life even looks like anymore. And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah, to really map this out.
Exactly. Today, we are exploring this completely unprecedented demographic shift that is happening right under our noses. We are looking at how, when, and honestly, if we are even forming families anymore.
And we really wanted a 360-degree view of this, so we aren't just relying on one viewpoint.
Right. We've pulled hard demographic numbers from the CDC and the World Health Organization. We mix that with deep sociological research from the Institute for Family Studies and the Center for Social Justice. And then we cross-referenced all of that with some raw cultural pulse checks.
Specifically, this really candid pop culture podcast called Sharing My Truth.
Yes, because we don't just want to read you a spreadsheet, right? We want to explore how these shifts actually feel for the people living through them.
The human element behind the statistics is where the real story lives. I mean, that's what makes it tangible. And it's important to note right off the hat, we aren't approaching this to debate the quote-unquote right or wrong way to live.
Oh, absolutely not.
The sources we're analyzing today come from wildly different, sometimes heavily conflicting viewpoints. Our goal is simply to lay out this changing landscape and impartially understand the forces driving it, no judgment attached.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with what is actually happening on the ground right now.
Well, if you look at the recent National Vital Statistics report from the CDC, it gives us this incredible bird's-eye view of U.S. birth rates spanning from 1990 all the way to 2023.
And the headline figure there is pretty shocking.
It is. It's a 14% drop in total U.S. births over that period, which is significant on its own.
Yeah. But
the real earthquake hiding in that data isn't just that fewer babies are being born, it's who is actually having them.
the age shift is wild. I mean, listen to this. In 1990, women under the age of 30 accounted for 70% of all births.
70%.
Think about that. 7 in 10 babies were born to women in their teens or 20s. But by 2023, that number dropped to less than half.
And when you break down that drop, the mechanics of it are, they're fascinating. Births to teenagers plummeted by 73%.
Which I think most public health officials view as a massive success.
Exactly. It's celebrated. But then you look at women aged 20 to 24, and births in that specific demographic dropped by 44%.
Wow.
Yeah, so the 20-something parent, which has historically been the biological and social norm for basically the entire history of our species, is just quietly disappearing from the demographic landscape.
And this is where the cultural conversation perfectly mirrors the data. On that Sharing My Truth podcast, the hosts are talking exactly about this disappearing act.
It's totally shifted.
It has. For young millennials and Gen Z, intentionally delaying this phase of life is basically the default setting now. I mean, they talk about focusing on financial independence, dealing with crippling student debt, or they just have much higher standards for a partner.
It makes sense.
Right. And some are even paralyzed by climate anxiety. They're actively asking themselves if it's even responsible to bring a child into a world with so much environmental uncertainty.
It is a completely rational response to a rapidly changing economic and environmental landscape. But those podcast hosts also highlight a major friction point driving this delay, which is just the state of modern dating itself.
Oh, man. Yeah.
They describe a culture that feels fundamentally broken. You have people glued to their smartphones. The organic in-person approach at like a coffee shop or a bar is practically extinct.
Yeah, one of the hosts mentioned you can sit at a crowded bar all night and literally no one will even look up from their phone to make eye contact. It's isolating.
And the dating apps, which were supposed to make this hyper-efficient, are just leading to massive psychological burnout instead.
It perfectly sets up this brilliant analogy I found in the sociological research from the Institute for Family Studies, which was totally echoed by those podcasters. It's the musical chairs analogy.
Love this one.
It's so accurate. It sounds like dating in your 20s right now is this chaotic game of musical chairs where everyone is just dancing around, having a great time, keeping their options open. Absolutely nobody wants to sit down and commit.
Right, because the music is playing.
Exactly. But then 30 hits, the music suddenly stops, and the panic sets in. You look around, realize there are only a few chairs left, and you scramble just to not be left standing alone.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just about changing dating preferences or swipe fatigue on an app. This is a structural decoupling of age, marriage, and parenthood.
It really is.
For centuries, our biology and these incredibly strict societal rules locked the timeline of marriage and childbearing into a very narrow window, usually your early 20s. Now we've removed the social pressure, but we haven't changed the underlying biology.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because if people are waiting until their late 30s or even 40s to have kids, mostly to avoid that early 20s musical chairs panic and get their careers sorted, can't we just rely on technology?
That is the big question.
Because we hear about IVF, egg freezing, surrogacy all the time. Doesn't modern medicine just give us a biological pause button?
That is exactly the assumption a massive portion of the population is operating under. But when you dig into the data from the World Health Organization, it paints a much more sobering reality.
Yeah.
It outlines what we might call the technological mirage.
A mirage. But the CDC data we just looked at says births to women aged 40 and older have increased by an incredible 193% since 1990.
They have.
So older women are clearly having more babies. How is that a mirage?
It's a mirage in the sense that we are vastly overestimating what science can currently achieve across a whole population.
Oh, I see.
Yes, those demographic numbers are up, but the WHO data makes it explicitly clear that technology cannot fully offset the natural decline in human fecundity.
Okay, let's put some hard numbers to that, because as someone who just assumed science had this handled, this blew my mind. According to the WHO source, at age 30, 75% of women can conceive within a year.
Right.
But by age 40, that drops to 44%.
And medically assisted reproduction, or MAR, which is the umbrella term for things like IVF, isn't a magic wand for that drop.
Not at all.
The success rates of MAR drop sharply with maternal age. And it's really crucial to understand why this happens.
It's not just getting older.
Right. It's not just that a woman's body gets quote-unquote tired. It's about chromosomal degradation. A woman is born with all the eggs she will ever have. Over decades, the cellular machinery within those eggs, specifically the spindle fibers that help cells divide, begins to weaken.
So it's a structural issue at the cellular level.
Exactly. So when an older egg attempts to divide and form an embryo, it's far more prone to chromosomal errors. IVF cannot fix the structural integrity of a 40-year-old egg.
So even in a pristine, state-of-the-art lab environment, the biology still holds the cards.
It really does. The WHO notes that following 2 completely finished IVF cycles, the probability of a live birth is about 30% at age 34.
Wow.
By age 38, it drops to 24%, and by age 42, it falls to just 17%.
A 17% chance. After going through the grueling, hormonally taxing, wildly expensive process of IVF twice, that is a heavy reality check.
It's brutal.
And it connects right back to a really raw moment on the Sharing My Truth podcast. The hosts were talking about friends in their late 30s who diligently froze their eggs in their 20s to focus on their careers.
Assuming they had this safety net.
Exactly. Assuming they had purchased this ultimate insurance policy, only to find out a decade later when they were finally ready to saw them that the eggs didn't survive the freezing process or just weren't viable.
That is heartbreaking.
They put all their eggs, literally and figuratively, into one technological basket that had a hole in it.
And if you zoom out from the individual heartbreak to the societal level, the macro impact of this technology is surprisingly small.
Really?
Yeah, the WHO highlights that medically assisted reproduction only boosts the nation's total fertility rate, the TFR, by a tiny margin. We're talking about an increase of just 0.02 to 0.10 children per woman nationally.
That's practically a rounding error on a national scale.
Exactly. For the individual families it helps. It is an absolute miracle. But as a macroeconomic solution to falling global birth rates, it's a drop in the ocean. The biology simply imposes hard limits that we haven't hacked yet.
Okay, so if delaying family formation carries these massive hidden biological risks, and technology isn't the guaranteed safety net we all kind of thought it was, where does that leave us?
That is the dilemma.
Because society is basically screaming at us right now to wait, to get established, pay down the student loans, get the big promotion. But the Institute for Family Studies source argues for doing the exact opposite.
And this raises an important question. It brings us to a really fascinating sociological debate, which is the difference between a capstone marriage and a cornerstone marriage.
This completely shifted my paradigm when I read it. The current cultural norm is the capstone marriage. The data shows the median age for a first marriage in the U.S. is now nearly 29 for women and over 30 for men. The concept here is that marriage is a capstone. It's the final brick you place at the very top of the pyramid. You explore sexually, you travel, you get your career going, you build a robust 401k, and then, once you are a fully formed independent adult, you seek a spouse to cap it all off.
Which, in a modern, hyper-competitive knowledge economy, sounds completely logical. You want to be stable before you merge your life with someone else.
Of course.
But the sociological research points out some fatal flaws in this model. First, with soaring home prices, inflation, and a volatile job market, reaching that mythical level of financial establishment might be perpetually out of reach. You could literally be waiting forever.
You never feel ready.
Exactly. And second, as we just explored with the IVF data, waiting forces a brutal collision of your biological deadlines and your social deadlines right in your mid-30s.
Enter the alternative, the cornerstone marriage. This is the model where marriage happens early, generally between the ages of 20 and 25.
Very different approach.
Completely. Instead of marriage being the final achievement, it acts as the foundation, a cornerstone. You are two budding, unfinished individuals growing up and building a life together.
And this is where people usually push back.
Oh, I did. I mean, pause. Anyone listening to this who actually got married at 22 is probably shouting, "I told you so," at their dashboard right now. But for the rest of us, modern psychology tells us our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for long-term decision-making, isn't even fully baked until we are 25.
That's true.
How on earth is committing to a lifelong legal contract at 22 a statistically good idea?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know. But the data from the National Marriage Project is incredibly robust here. Now, it is true that teen marriages, ages 18 and 19, do have significantly higher risks of divorce.
Okay, that tracks.
But, and this is the key finding, marriages formed between the ages of 20 and 24 have no higher divorce rates than those formed at 25 or older.
How is that possible? I just assumed early 20s meant guaranteed divorce.
It comes down to malleability. Think about the psychology of habit formation. Merging modest finances and flexible habits in your early 20s is simply easier because you haven't hardened into your ways yet.
Oh, that makes sense.
You are co-creating your financial and domestic habits together. Compare that to the capstone model, where you are trying to merge the deeply entrenched lifestyles, spending habits, and independent routines of two mid-30s professionals.
Oh, I love that. Basically, the capstone model is like trying to mash two fully built, fully furnished houses together. It sounds exhausting just deciding whose couch stays and whose goes, let alone how to split the mortgage.
Right, there's so much friction.
While the cornerstone model is like pouring the concrete and building the house together from scratch.
That is a perfect way to visualize the friction. And beyond just avoiding divorce, the data points to measurable benefits for the cornerstone model. First, there's the marriage premium.
The income boost.
Yes. Studies consistently show that married people of both genders tend to earn more money than their single peers in the exact same age brackets. The mechanism here is mutual support.
How does that work in practice?
Well, An unemployed spouse can afford to hold out for a much better paying job because they have a partner's income acting as a safety net. Or an employed spouse is psychologically incentivized to seek higher pay because they are providing for a family unit, not just themselves.
There was also a massive curveball in the data regarding the cornerstone model and sexual satisfaction. The IFS data indicates that men and women who marry earlier report significantly higher rates of long-term sexual satisfaction.
Which totally flies in the face of the modern pop culture narrative.
Completely. The advice you always hear is, experience everything you can, date around, get it all out of your system before you settle down.
Right, but the sociological data suggests the opposite mechanism is at play. Research actually shows that having a high number of premarital sexual partners is linked to lower sexual quality and stability during marriage. By marrying early, couples often opt out of the modern hookup culture, which, as the podcast host noted, is increasingly performative, unfulfilling, and exhausting.
It's the swipe fatigue we talked about.
Exactly. Instead, cornerstone couples build deep psychological intimacy within a committed framework from the jump, which the research shows yields much higher long-term satisfaction because the vulnerability and trust are already baked in.
Okay, so the data makes a really strong case that when people commit, matters deeply. But it begs a much bigger question about the mechanism of commitment itself. If you find a great partner at 23, why not just move in together and cohabit?
Right, keep it simple.
What's incredibly common, you get the dual income, you get the shared house. Why does the actual legal piece of paper matter?
This is where the research gets deeply psychological. We turn to the Center for Social Justice and the Marriage Foundation thesis for this. For a very long time, sociologists argued that marriage was essentially just a selection effect.
Meaning, only people who already have their lives together get married. So marriage is just a marker of privilege, like wealth, education, age, not the actual cause of a stable relationship.
Precisely. It was seen as an outcome, not a driver. But this new state-of-the-art longitudinal study of over 3,000 UK couples completely shatters that assumption.
Wow, how so?
The author found that marriage itself accounts for half or more of the stability gap between married and unmarried parents. Even when you control for socioeconomic background, income, and education, the mere act of being married substantially increases the chances you stay together.
But how? What is the actual mechanism there? How does a government contract make a human relationship more resilient?
It operates through what sociologists call commitment theory. Commitment relies on two distinct dimensions. First, dedication, which is the want to, the love, the shared values, the emotional bond.
The romantic part.
Right. And second, constraints, which are the have to. The tangled finances, the social expectations of your families, the daunting legal and financial penalties of a divorce.
Yeah, not the messy stuff.
Exactly. Relationships that possess both high dedication and high constraints are empirically the most stable over time.
And this leads perfectly into one of my favorite concepts from the research, which is sliding versus deciding.
Such a powerful concept.
It really is. Think about cohabitation. I'll use an analogy. It's like signing up for a 30-day free trial of a software subscription. You put your credit card in just to test it out. That's like moving in together because it saves on rent.
You're just testing the waters.
You haven't made a grand declaration of lifelong intent, but you get so used to the interface that you just let it auto-renew year after year. Suddenly you share a lease, a couch, maybe a dog. You are racking up massive constraints, the have to before you ever fully establish the profound dedication, the want to.
Because you never actively chose it.
Right, you never actively bought it, you just forgot to cancel.
That is exactly the danger of sliding. Marriage, conversely, is an active, aggressive decision. You don't accidentally slide into a wedding. And the CSJ paper highlights two psychological mechanisms that explain why this decision acts as a superglue.
Let's hear them.
The first is signal theory. In economics and psychology, talk is cheap. Anyone can say I love you, but the act of marriage sends a deafeningly clear signal of intent to your partner because it involves profound sacrifice.
A public aspect of it.
Yes, you are standing up in public, sacrificing all alternative romantic options, and voluntarily accepting the high legal and financial costs of a potential divorce. That willing sacrifice is the signal that creates deep trust.
And the second mechanism is cognitive consistency theory. This is where the psychology gets slightly manipulative in the best way possible.
It really does.
It relies on the concept of cognitive dissonance. The human brain literally cannot handle holding two conflicting ideas at the same time. It causes extreme psychological distress.
Right. If you spend $20,000 on a wedding, Stand up in front of your entire family and sign a legally binding document. Your brain is deeply invested in this choice.
It has to be.
So if you later start thinking, my spouse is annoying or that person at work is attractive, your brain experiences massive cognitive dissonance. It cannot reconcile the monumental action you took on your wedding day with these fleeting doubts.
So what does the brain do?
To resolve the stress, your brain forcefully rewires its own perception. It subconsciously amplifies your partner's positive traits and actively downgrades alternative partners just to justify the massive sunk cost of the commitment you made.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this? Is a wedding ring basically just a psychological locking mechanism that forces your own brain to commit through cognitive dissonance?
What's fascinating here is that, yes, biologically and psychologically it is. We are wired to respond to public declarations and the intentional building of structural constraints.
It's built into our hardware.
Exactly. When a couple decides to marry, rather than slide into cohabitation, they are intentionally building an architecture of dedication and constraints that is fundamentally more resilient to the inevitable stresses of life, career changes, and parenthood.
This entire deep dive really reframes how we look at the trajectory of a human life. I mean, whether you are single right now and feeling the burnout of the dating apps, whether you are married and navigating raising kids, or whether you have actively chosen to remain child-free, these macro demographic shifts are completely rewriting the operating system of the society you live in.
Without a doubt. The U.S. total fertility rate is currently sitting at 1.62. That is well below the 2.1 replacement level needed just to keep a population stable.
And a number that low isn't just a quirky trivia fact.
Not at all. It dictates the future. It means profound, unavoidable structural changes are coming to our economy. It impacts the social safety nets we all rely on. How we fund pensions, who provides elder care when the base of the population pyramid shrinks.
It affects everything.
It does. It challenges our very cultural definition of what constitutes a fulfilling, successful life.
We are entering a completely new era. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on everything we've explored today. For the vast majority of human history, our biology and incredibly strict social norms dictated the exact timeline of our lives.
You didn't have much of a say.
You grew up, you got married young, you had kids. The path was just paved for you. There wasn't much room for debate or anxiety about what to do next.
But today, through medical technology, the shift to a knowledge economy, and massive cultural liberation, we have effectively decoupled sex, marriage, and childbearing.
We have an unprecedented level of freedom to choose our own paths and our own timelines.
It's totally historically unique.
But it leaves us with this paradox. Are we actually more free? Or, by dismantling the traditional roadmap, have we just replaced the heavy societal pressure to conform with a new, paralyzing pressure?
That's a real question.
A pressure that demands you perfectly orchestrate a flawless timeline, optimizing your career, your finances, and your biology entirely on your own before the music stops and the chairs are all gone. It's a lot to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you on the next one.